As we let it fill in. Got our podcast. We got into transparent projection, or transparent perception. We got into the irrational solidarity, transitional conflicts. Throughout the week, we've been going into the aspects of the assessment of standards, self-assessment. There's nowhere to run. All of these videos are on the channel. Tonight, we're going to get into WanderLust. If my perception in my perspective of our victim complex, if my perspective is of a victim complex, then my perception will always see things as threats. Your healing is not hard. None of this is hard. It's just the false perception of that echoes of never wanting to lose again. You've gained all of these things, but so when that assessment comes up, how did you gain everything into your space? We're going from the term of magic, which is no more than magnetism, which is the aspect of our emotions. So now we have to take responsibility for our intentions, the give and take, what we've built, where we're at. These are the things that, when we think about this WanderLust, wandering in your space, wandering where you're at, and allowing your urges to be, as long as the urge is met, you can keep that behavior. Like over the last couple of weeks, we've been getting deep into these behaviors, getting deep into the behavior aspect, the emotional taglines. Tonight, we're going to get into this true aspect of like a deeper look into intimacy. I talked about this sometime last year when I did the sex lecture. We got into intimacy, and I got into it again when I got into a lecture about intimacy. So we're going to get into the true power of intimacy with self, not looking for the release based on the negative. We hold into that negative aspect. We getting into that tonight. We're getting into the shedding of the false mind and understanding what the false mind is. The best way to explain the false mind is that if you read the Pistis de Sophia, when it talks about Yadal the broth and piercing the womb and creating everything based on what it heard or what it seen or what it heard, it can't see anything into that space. That would be one of the best ways or reference points to look at the aspect of the false mind. That crutch, that handicap, that perspective that you have synthesized yourself into to create the space that you're in. The thought processes that you create. Sup. This process of creation that we've come into and not understanding what we have brought into our space, it's always based in, as a moment we're always getting into, it's the unseen aspect. It's the it's the unseen aspect. It's the unresolved. So that's why every time we go into these spaces with ourselves, especially when it comes into becoming intimate, naked with ourselves, the reason that fear mantra, that fear that comes up, is always based off of that unseen. Everything that you created to lock up those unseen aspects. The reason that this relationship was your longest lasting relationship as compared to all your other relationships were short. There was something in that first relationship that we have to assess, that what did they accept of my unseen, that was an intimate aspect of myself that no one else has accepted. So now, if we look at the first relationships that we ever developed, the first relationship that you ever developed, a lot of these times, what was taken, what was not given, what did you feel was not given? And now, if you take that accountability to that aspect and you think about your perspective and what you're building around your perspective of that space, think about what you think. You're constantly trying to fill a void. As long as you are not whole, as long as you're not dealing with, as long as you're not tapping into your shadow work, there will always be a void that you'll be trying to fill. Whether you consciously know there's a void there, and some of the deeper voids are voids that you didn't even realize were there because you thought that, hey, I made it without it. Just because you made, and I've talked about this early through the week, just because you made it without it doesn't mean that that aspect is something that does not have to be looked at. You had that. I remember I had a whole. I had a whole relationship for 12 years with my pops, and I thought that that was who I came from biologically. When I found out that this man that looks just like me, my father, it opened up an entire different game of emotions that I had to go understand. So then I jumped onto that bandwagon, hopped into the underworld. I'm out there, Poppy. Oh, I'm in that life. So now I'm thinking that my life is good because, this came up and it made my life better. But why do I still feel? Why am I still triggered? Why am I still bothered? Even if I put something here and something came into my space that changed the entire course of me. That's what we have to get into. That's the intimate aspect. When you're thinking of tonight, we're going to be getting into these aspects of relationships, understanding the relationships from this sense of, on a lower sense, we're thinking about it's this quick release to make ourselves feel good. So if you're looking like when you were younger and you were building these connections and these attachments, which were underlined with attachments, it was based on what you've been through, what they've been through. You guys came together, y'all held each other down and went through that space. But at a point in time, if they went off somewhere and they met somebody and changed their life, you changed your life, things changed in your life. Now you keep trying to come back to this space and you're like, the things that y'all used to rock with, the things that used to make y'all excited, y'all used to rock with, used to be cool. Now it's not up to par anymore. What happened? That's when the emotions have to be assessed. Why was that space put together? Why was that your friend in the first place? Were they ever really your friend? We understand, or we come and understand with our shadow work and dealing our internal work, a lot of the things that we attracted into our space, now that we understand, like, they were based on my unseen. You can go down your friend list right now. I always say tell people to go down their friend list and their contact list. Go down your contact list right now. Give a reason to each one of those. What is the reason for each one of those people in your life? What is what we do externally is we give them a purpose, and since we're giving them a purpose externally, we're giving them a standard externally. We have to accept their standard based on their purpose, based on what we have not dealt with. So if someone's always keeping me in a state of avoidance, hey girl, let's go party. Hey yo, bro, let's go party. Hey, let's go drink. Let's go drink the night away. Da 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 da. And they're always in that mindset. How did they connect to me? How did they come in? How did I attract that into my space? Because a lot of times we keep looking at the material, the top layer, the surface, and without understanding the framework of that connection that brought that conduit together, the emotional aspect, the emotional aspect, the intimate levels of that, the intimate level to it. A lot of times you'll be able to understand when you start looking at your conversations differently. Over the last, like 2 weeks ago, we talked about those emotional taglines. But it's also, if I don't understand to break down a pattern, I have to understand that I have to go beyond the behavioral tags. That means the parts in the conversation that I want to pull out to keep my behavior intact. I got to go past the emotional trigger, the emotional tagline. That means me trying to read this based on this flow of these words to match my behavior. So if my behavior, if I'm in conflict or I have a conflict with myself, that means when I'm reading something, when I'm hearing something, that emotional ear only takes it in, and we don't get into that sniper pose. My emotional ear, my instinct, my perception, my perspective is only going to take it in one way. It's only going to take it in one way. It's going to take it in through that stream of the conflicts. It's going to take it down the river Styx, down through them conflicts. Or once I learn how to assess and I'm transmuting it, I can take it to the highest aspects, or I can take it to the GOAT, take it to the Silver City. It's always been your choice. But if we're always used to bringing ourselves, because we're in that negative aspect with ourselves, that negative aspect, staying in that negative space and attracting things based on that negative space. Give you an example. Think about simple shit. You got that job. You got the car. You got that friendship, relationship. You're keeping these things in your space. The same way that they came into your space are the same way that they're going to separate from your space. Gone unchecked. Now it's that same natural motion. So if I put that in my thought process and I know everything's going to separate based on that natural fission, that natural aspect of conflict, then it's only based on the depth into myself. Regardless, everything's going to fall away anyway. You're just not looking for it anymore. Remember, like when we look at the string theory, particle theory, you look at it, it's going to come whatever my thoughts is what it's going to become, how it's going to look. But if I'm no longer looking for how that's supposed to, if I'm no longer looking at that, and I'm truly looking, I'm focusing into the internal sense, and I'm allowing this to come into my space to learn my own perception, to see where it's projecting, to see how it's happening to seeing how it happens in real time. Then I'm able to assess myself. The more faster the better I became at assessing myself. Yeah. I was like, oh, he told him about his devil face. I didn't give you that face, son. Think about this aspect. Think about this aspect. Just simply using the aspect of your face, how you look at yourself, how you view yourself. What do you view yourself as? A lot of times we get stuck, and this is one thing that we get stuck when we're going into our healing work, earlier aspects, going deeper into our healing work. We're looking at everything that's falling away as a loss. And those losses trigger us. The loss of the perception of your family, the loss of the perception of your friends, the loss of the perception of your job, the loss of the perception of you're afraid to lose that perception. You're afraid to lose that perception. It challenges, but you have to have that perspective, that perception challenge, so you can look at from a different perspective. If every time it doesn't matter, like you want to say, I don't want to be disrespected anymore. I'm loved. I don't want to be disrespected anymore. Ain't no one going to disrespect me. Where are you saying it from? If you're saying it from a space of fear, 9 times out of 10, when I was like, ain't nobody going to disrespect me, it was on some, ain't nobody going to play me. People trying to play my face. People don't know who I am. People should know me by now. And it was always based on an identity that I had to maintain inside of that space. I always had to be this false identity, this false mindset. I always had to look at it, and it always comes from somewhere. Remember, the unseen creates your space. That unhealed aspect, that undealt with, unresolved issue, that's what creates your space. That first traumatic experience is what's going to fuel you into your space. Whether it was the disciplinary functions, or you were in the Cinderella sense of light, you were like Cinderella to the family, Cinderella woman, Cinderella man to the family, whether it was sexual abuse and all of these different layers, so you're threatened. You're living in that fear. So whatever you have in your space, person, place, thing, whatever that aspect is in your space, that's just the sniping post. That relationship because before I say the sniping post part, let's get into this aspect. If relationship, well, what relationship that it is, if every time I go into it, I have to look at it differently. Nothing outside of me can make me happy. Nothing outside of me can bring me to. Nothing outside of me can make me happy. Nothing outside of me can bring me at peace. Nothing outside of me can love me more than me or understand me more depth than me. Nothing outside of me can provide anything till I provide it to myself, until I'm vibrating, until I'm on that frequency. Everything that's going to come into my space is going to challenge me based on that frequency. Where do I want to be? That fear of that change, that adept fear of change that we have, that fear, I don't want to do that part. That underrooted, that codependency, because remember I've told you, we've said this before, to be independent, that means you're in codependence of ones that are dependent. So as long as you keep saying that in that space where you're at, claiming this independent aspect, everything in your space has to have a dependency based on something emotional, based on that external standard. That's why it's time to assess those standards. I remember when I sat back and I really assessed my standards, and I reassessed my standards, and I reassessed my standards. And I kept saying, why the fuck shit ain't changing when I'm looking? I changed my standard. My standard's higher because my standard was only based on the external narrative. My standard was only based on money. My standard was only based on money, the car, the crib I had, the shit I had in my house, the things that were only based on external narratives and external values. But until I understood that, those are just byproducts. Money is simply the byproduct of my energy. Because when I understand money is the byproduct of my energy, then I understand that if I'm in a scarce situation, a struggle situation, a fear-based situation, and the frequency of fear is fast, that means I'll never take the time to invest. What am I investing into? What is my fear going into this? What am I investing myself into? So now if I look at the byproduct of money and the standard that I hold towards money, I will always put myself in a position to give it away anyway, in some way, shape, or form, to find comfort. So I never, investment on the external sense is the deepest of a sacrifice. So we have to understand, we're going to get into that definition of that investment, or that investment based in support. Remember, I talked about that last Thursday, the aspect of support, your support system. Your first support system is your unseen, your traumatic events, your traumatic experiences. That's the shadow. That is your support system. So everything externally outside of you is based in your ego to keep you comfortable. That sniping post that you have, that's the friend, family, those aspects, that's the sniping post. They're programmed to hold up the sniper. So I got to understand who the hell the sniper is. Guess who your sniper is? Your sniper is your inner child sitting up there looking through the scope, looking at you. Oh, you're going to pay attention to me today. Oh, you're going to pay attention today. Oh, you're going to feel this today. That's what your inner child sitting in there doing. The most diabolical entity that you sitting here mad at is your inner child. That's why if you go look at Dragon Ball Z and the niggas stuff, that's why if you look at cartoons, you ever notice the kids never grow the fuck up? Kids never grow the fuck up in cartoons. They never grow up. They stay in that set, that age, and keep going through the same, the experiences keep coming, and they never age. Think about, let's use Rugrats as an example. Until they did that college, when they went to school, high school and shit, and it got horrible. But when they were kids, in that imaginary sense, and how they took on everything that they took on, and attracted and created everything into that space, that's what you've been doing the entire time. It's been you versus you, wandering around in your space, and the only thing that you keep getting triggered by is the succumbing to your urges, staying in that urge, trying to stay in that perception, trying to remain this list of faculties, or this false mind concept. Also, you can keep yourself locked into that space and not do what you need to do. Because if you were in your purpose has no limits. Your potential and your purpose have no limitations. There's no constrictions. There's no restrictions. You got the floor ultimately open to addressing your standard. Your standard now changes from the external to the internal. Because you start looking at it just like similar to, think about how you do we do this unconscious shit all the fucking time. Think about your first house. Think about your first crib. Think about the standards that you set in your first spot, as opposed to the spots you in now. Think about that. Think about that aspect, and then you start understanding why you keep going in, why you keep fluctuating into different spaces. That's by design. That's by your design to get you to where you need to get to. The multiple paths leading to your light. The multiple paths leading to your light, but first you got to go through the darkness first. So if you get attached to this one aspect over here, that one aspect, we don't get into that aspect of the intimacy with yourself. The same way that you treat all energy is all, you just pulling all energy from one source. You just lock it down into different conduits. If you think about it on that level, everything's in that synonymous algorithm, whether it's on fear or it's based on love. Love is a frequency of destructive force because it's the wavelength is so strong and so long that it destroys things and breaks things up. That's why after you get out of a relationship that you thought you was in love, or was an aspect of love into that relationship, the shit hurt because it's a longing feeling. the lesson is meant there for it. When you're stuck in fear and you just sitting there dumping your stuff off, because basically what we're doing in this concept with your friends, trying to keep family, trying to wake people, they're not coming with you. They're not coming. That thought process of they're not coming, they're not coming. They're not coming. They will come in their time when it is their time. Now it's you have to. This is why it's the focus on. The focus is on you. Because if I understand that everything outside of me reflects or radiates or responds to me, I have to get out of the childlike mindset of everything responding to me based on the negative aspect. My inner child sitting on that sniping post. I got to get out of that mindset first. I got to get out of those patterns first. I got to assess those habits first. I got to assess my behaviors first. And if you've ever noticed, think about it. You thinking about, somebody that you know that they can't get their life together. We have those people in our life. They can't get their life together. They're not thinking. Every time you ask them a question, they have a reason to their why to deflect away from it. Like, why I can't do it. I would have to do this, and I would have to do this, and I would have to do this, and I would have to do this. Why does it bother you? Have you ever said that self-assessment to yourself? Why does it bother you? Why does it bother you? I remember so many times with my little brother, my sisters, cousins, family, friends, just anybody. And it would blow my fucking mind that they would be upset that I advanced at my job, or I would advance at my job, or I would acquire something. I would become something more with myself. At first, the way that I approached those situations, heavy fucking deflection. Not even realizing what deflection was. I was heavy fucking deflection. Every time they said something, I felt in my mind I had to have something to say back to them that would cut them just as deep as they said something to me. Whether it was something in a personal sense, or it had to be something for me to cut them back to make them step away from me. That's deflection. Until I learned to assess myself and get intimate with my energy and intimate with myself in the aspects of my energy, how I use my energy, what I'm magnetizing. If looking at my intentions, the trial and error process of going through my intentions, that means sitting at my job, working these jobs over and over again, 5 years. Every one of my jobs lasts for about 5 years. So I'm in this state with myself, constantly keep doing this, and this. And I kept getting the same result. And then I just became, this is what I had to notice. Self-assessment. If every time I keep going into a space and I keep doing the same exact thing and I keep getting the same exact result, but I have this hope narrative in my mind, but I'm doing the same exact thing, that means I'm putting the same amount of energy. Your thought already has the impact of the energy anyway. So what thought was I thinking the first time that I did that? What's different now? What have I learned? I'm not that same individual anymore. So that aspect won't come through that space anymore. I'm not there anymore. The only thing there is the memory. The only thing there is the memory. The only thing there is the perception. The only thing there is the perspective. My perspective has changed. I've absorbed things since that moment at that point. So why I can't go back through that point? Taking these things into account is a major part of self-assessment and self-reflection. You cannot perform self-care until you've taken the self-assessment of that self-assessment and taken in self-reflection. See, we always thinking about externally. Self-care is on the internal aspect. Self-care is the most of the internal aspects, the most intimate aspects. That's why whenever you go to get your nails done, you go get your hair cut, go get your locks retwisted, get your beard cut up, that you feel good, you feel, nigga, damn, I'm the baddest nigga in this shit. You feel good. But then you gotta go back to work. Then you gotta go back and deal with life. Now the nail just broke. Oh, now this happened. Self-care is internal. Self-care is internal, so just like my standard. So what we usually do, we look at the self-care on the external aspect. So as long as the external is taken care of, I don't have to assess. I don't have to do any self-reflecting. But I have to understand that it's because I got to keep up this maintenance of my self-care routine on the external. The only reason I got to keep that up is because of what it's based in. The intimacy with myself. The intimate relationship that I have with myself. My emotional aspects. What am I investing my energy in? How do I invest my energy? What's the value of my energy? What's the perspective of my energy? What is my focus on why when I would get off work why when I get off work, even though I have the thought of going home, I got the thought to go to my house, I got the thought to go sit the fuck down, make myself a sandwich, pop something in the oven, whatever it may be, eat my food and mind my damn business. Why? What is this deflection pattern or course of action that I take, and why do I take it? That's self-assessment. That's understanding your patterns and your habits. Why do I take this course? What emotional avenue am I riding on? And when you start looking at that, you'll start looking at why you go to certain places. Remember, to do our shadow work, it's not to, here's the shadow. It's to understand and go through the process of assessing those emotions. I get angry when this happens. Why do I get angry? What is my anger rooted to? What was the first example of me being in that angry state? What is this wound? What aspect, what initiated this first cut into myself? What was the first cut? Oh shit. It might be this might be that wound. What gave me my abandonment wound? What gave me this neglect wound? So now that I'm in this wound, remember I told you, like, you can't run away from your wounds. You simply go into spaces that only live in the wound. So if you have neglect issues, all of your relationships will be based upon neglect. Even if it's, and I'm not talking, even one of the relationships that you're trying to consider will be based upon neglect. And it may not be them being the neglectful one. It might be you being the neglectful one. You got to be the bad guy. So now you going into space and you being real neglectful. You listening to their cries for help, but you don't know how to help yourself. So of course you don't know how to help them. You don't know how to assess yourself, so you don't even know how to separate from the situation. If there's an individual, I had to do the one of the deepest assessments that I did after I do it myself is assessing my circles, is assessing your circle. That's going to be the first line of defense of you assessing yourself. So if you look into your circle, you look at your circle right now, if you're in that traumatic experience, you know you aren't dealing with those things. Everybody in your space basically is just masturbating they're just masturbation posts, just like they're masturbation posts for your ego. They make you feel good about where you at. They remind you of where you at. Girl, you don't need to do this. And girl, you don't need to do that. Yo, homie, you don't need to do this. You don't need to do that. So then they give you this positive, euphoric feeling because you're looking for the positive. The feminine aspect is the recessive or the negative aspect of yourself. So you go get that positive feeling, that positive hit, and you feel good about yourself. You feel good about what you said. But then you go back into your space, the energy that was within that space that created that space was based on the correspondence of the same wound. Especially if you're dealing with family. That's why it gets so heavy. That's why one of the heaviest legs is family. Your whole family narrative have conversations but don't really talk about shit. Your whole family is all based on that one secret about you. That family secret. Everybody that's came into your space is accepted based on that secret because they based on that same frequency of avoidance. So as long as everybody's avoiding some shit, as long as everybody's avoiding something, as long as everybody's dismissive about something in your space, that's why they keep attracting into your space. You keep attracting niggas in your space that are of avoidance. You keep attracting these. You wanted a bad bitch. I want a bad bitch. Okay, cool. You want a bad bitch. All right, cool. External narrative. You said hair, all this shit. Da 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 da. She independent. She got her money. She got her. All right, cool. Most people have went through an experience in their life that has put them in that seat. Remember, I talked about the masculine seat, the masculine and the feminine seat. Most people in that traumatic experience that are stuck within the independent cycle are stuck within the traumatic experience. So that's why they live into that space. But y'all have a talking phase. And we don't get it. This talking phase about intimacy. Most of your friendships, most of your relationships, I had to learn that most of my relationships and friendships were simply they never got past the talking phase. Even one of my longest relationships, which was 5 years, was only the talking phase. The reason that I realized that and had to assess it, I was like, there was never any comprehension. Conflict met conflict. See, we're so used to conflict and not understanding conflict's a natural aspect of growth. Conflict meeting conflict. Therefore, conflict versus conflict always cancels out. That's why heavy ass emotion. Oh my God, it's a heavy sense of emotion. I'm feeling all okay. Followed by I'm sorry. Let's go have a drink. I'm sorry. I'm going to buy you some shit. I'm sorry. I'm going to give you this. I'm sorry. I'm going to do this, this, and this. Never changing no investment in change. No acknowledging things and bringing it to the surface. And this changes because once you start having that power conversation with yourself every morning, you have to start having these power conversations with yourself and being really honest with yourself. I'm talking about honest with yourself. As honest. Thank you. When you're honest with yourself, you're going into this space to break away the attachment. If I'm sitting in a space and I truly say something's not if there's nothing in that space because if I want something to grow, I'm going to nurture it. That means I'm going to assess the weeds. That means I'm going to nurture it, and I'm going to nurture that space. The natural nurturing of me inside of me creating a space that's of nurturing for myself to reflect in my first experience, which is my space and opportunity. That means everything tuned in my space is based on you can't hold nothing back. It's always going to be the truth. Going back into the same narrative that I remember my grandmother always telling me, you have the ability that no matter how you see a person, you will always see a person as who they are. They cannot go past who they are. You will always see them for who the fuck they are, whether they're at their worst point or at their best point. Whatever point they're at, that's the point you're going to see. Shit fucked up my head when it came to my clairvoyance, my clairvoyances and my ability. I was like, God damn, I see that. I can see I was sitting there literally like Constantine the first time that nigga saw Dead People or The Shining. That's what that fucking shit was like for me when I was younger. Shit blew my fucking mind. I'm like, why the fuck do this person, everybody sees this person smiling and looking happy, but why do I see that they're not happy? And then that shit had to get shut off. So this is also an aspect when you're thinking about your gifts getting shut off. There's going to be a point in time when you were in your childlike mind, your childlike aspect to help you let go and apologize to your parents and your gifts, and you saying they shut your gifts off. Your gifts had to be shut the fuck down in order for you to learn how to use them. That's the whole purpose of coming down here. You coming down here like Superman, and we talked about Superman before. You came down here like Superman. Superman went through a whole process where he had to watch his Earth daddy die so people did not see his powers. You had to come down here with all that, because what would be the purpose of being able to use these abilities and cultivate through these abilities if you didn't learn what the hell you needed to learn first? That's why everything came into the sequence where it's now, where you got the Stark Seeds, the Indigo Children, you got all these people, the kids with their abilities and their gifts online. They're there to show you the reflection of your gift. That's their purpose, their perception. You think your son, your daughter, your niece, your nephew, they just extra perceptive. They don't hold their tongue. They remind you of you when you were little or who you wish that you were. So now you sitting in that space, you're like, man, damn, I wish I could be that. You can. That's what you need to get back to. That's what we're getting back to. You're going back to that point. You're going back to that innocent point. Because that's when you attracted everything into your space. Think about it when you were little. Think about it when you were little in this aspect of, even in the most littlest sense, if you got little things, gifts, birthday parties, things of that nature, everything that came into your space, it was all based upon you coming into that space to learn some shit. If you had the hardships, you had the hardships. Some of y'all had some good shit, but you had a balance in that space. Everything remained balanced. Everything was in an aspect of balance. Give and take, give and take, give and take. The human narrative of your ego, it will have you thinking that you had more give than take, or you had more take than give. But it was always a sense of balance. Because if it wasn't a sense of balance, your ass would have expired at that point in time. That's when we think about these transitions. There was no balance. Balance must be restored. There must be a sacrifice. There must be a transition. There's something must pass through in order for the balance to be restored. Whether it's to show the assessment of emotions or to show the assessments of shit that's been hidden. That always happens. So when you're thinking about, oh my God, they just killed all those people in that club, restore balance. You react to it, fear-based, restore the balance to the fear. It restored the balance back to the fear. Conflict. You want to meet it with conflict. Cancel that shit. Clean the fuck out. Power goes right into the space where it needs to go into. Until you understand your power and what you're attracting. Oh my God, this keeps happening in my life. Why do all my relationships seem to end the same way? Because you're thinking about them ending the same way. Go back and look at all of your relationships and assess your relationships. Really assess yourself in the relationship. And the best way to do the assessment is going to look at all the triggering points. Whether old buddy hit you upside your head or old girl held a gun up to your head and told you to get on Instagram or get on Facebook or get on social media, even MySpace, let's say MySpace, and told you to say that you don't love none of these bitches. And had you out there wearing a fucking shirt with her name across it. That's how you're going to, that point of that traumatic response is how you're going to tap in to assessing yourself. Your emotional ears. That emotional ear with yourself. Because you sitting there in that space, 90%, most of the conversations that you had, or most of the ways that you taking in information, remember, it goes through the most dense point. So it goes through your trauma. So every time somebody says something to you and you feeling some type of way about it, it's assessing it's hitting that trauma, kissing your trauma right down the cheek, brushing and grazing you like shit, forcing you to look at yourself, reevaluating your standards. I had a thought process about product. And producing and being able to create and understanding what that truly meant. Think about your job and how easy your job is because all you got to do is show up. Think about it as a job. All you got to do is show up. What is your expectancy if all you got to do is show up? Your job take care of everything else. Your job take care of the insurance plans, the payroll, the schedule, the hours, everything, the orders, everything. So what do you really deserve other than what you're receiving from your job? If you want more, you know you must do more. You must advance. But if you're stuck in a space to where you feel like you've done all of this work, then it made me really understand the purpose of what the job was for. My man's Derek Grace too on Instagram. He was like, I posted the video. He was like, your job, just like everything else, is for intellectual property. When I understood why I kept going to all of my jobs at the same fucking frequency and always I remember every time when I really started understanding it, I realized that I remember I can go back to that building don't even exist anymore. I can go back to one restaurant that I worked at, and within 6 months, I was a trainer. Within that same year, just because of the times that they put in there, they were like, yo, we're going to put you in there. Like, and I noticed that a lot of those fucking, the standards that they put in place were similar to the standards that we put in place for ourselves. Because I was at a job for 6 months and became a trainer. Motherfuckers was upset as fuck that I became a trainer in 6 months. Cycle back around to that next year, I was already doing manager and supervisor functions in that same year. Everybody around me was like, yo, they usually say it takes a year before you do this and this time for this and this. Who the fuck listens to those fucking times? And this is an aspect of understanding yourself and knowing yourself, if you know what you know and you are applying it, what's stopping you from accepting that challenge of that next position? This is what happens when you stuck in that false perception with that false mind and what the false mind created. You feel that, oh, it's going to take a year. If they say it's going to take a year, then you're going to take that year because it's going to take you away from accountability and responsibility. Because you're thinking about all the other years that you were in a certain space with yourself and you sat there and you took a year. You're like, ooh, I have 365 days. That means I ain't got to think about that until the 364th day to think about that. That means I got all this time right here to bullshit. I got all this over here I got all this time over here to bullshit. I got all this time based in avoidance. That's the same way. That's one of the best ways to explain when it goes into doing your work. That space that you have. We ain't used to having space. That's why everybody was like, "Ooh, we all from Africa," because you weren't used to having space. You just reacted to, you weren't used to having space. Ooh, we all from Africa. White people are from Europe. Then you got a little bit deeper, and they said, the deeper that we get, the blacker that it gets. And then you later on found out the Moors did the civilization aspects of Africa, of Europe. Queen Europa was a, oh shit, they're not from there either. That means we got more space. That means we got more responsibility. This goes into the aspects of your patterns and your habits. You're used to a certain set of pattern and a behavior in those habits because it keeps you in this safe space. That's your comfort zone. Anything that comes towards that and hits that, your inner child still sitting over there on that sniper post, called that relationship, called that job, called that car note, called that getting that certification, doing what you needed to do. Your inner child sitting up there on that sniping post, hitting you like, yo, when the fuck you gonna leave from behind that spot? Stop ducking. Let me shoot your ass. I have to kill you. I have to kill you. I got to kill that false perception that you got hanging up there. Because your barrier or your perception is everything based in your ego. The doppelganger to your inner child has a shadow itself. That's what your ego is. So whenever y'all heard me talking about killing your ego, it's killing this false perception, killing that false mindset as we get deeper into it. That comfort zone, that old standard. If I lose this standard, what else will I lose? You're looking at somebody that's been homeless twice. It doesn't change the appreciation for what's in your space. What comes into your space, what provides things into your space through your growth and through your process, it doesn't change the appreciation for those aspects. But you have to learn how to be in these spaces without attachment. It's about the connection. As you get more internally in depth with yourself and understanding yourself, you develop a greater connection. You could develop a greater mindset. You can be connected to somebody mentally, but it can get scary for you because you still got walls up. You still got them walls and them barriers up. So Lord forbid you come around a motherfucker that's on that I break shit down. That's what I am. I am the bearer of light. Shatter everything that I'm shattering. Because I did that to myself. I took those years and those aptitudes to do that to myself. So picking up these methods, still remaining open, removing bias, because that's what you're being taught as you start applying to that intimacy with yourself. You learn how to retain and release what is no longer. Every time you're releasing, what are you releasing? This is when we get into this masturbation of your ego. You got people around you that masturbate your ego. How many people around you in that space think with yourself that when you look at them, you're like, at least I'm not like them. You're exactly like them. You're exactly like them in correspondence and equivalence. The same fears, the same fear and wounds that they have with themselves, that's the reason that you connect to them. That's the undercurrent. That's the silver lining in your relationship. That's the umbilical cord that you created into that aspect, into that space. They just like you. But you got to go below the surface. Their insecurities, their doubts, the reason they won't move forward, the reason they can't seem to do something or take an accountability, the only reason that you keep going into the space and now that it's irritating you is because your inner child sitting there keep hitting you with like, yep, that's it, that's it, that's it, that's it. You got to learn the emotion. You got to learn these aspects of these emotions. Every time you go into a space, now you irritated. That's your inner child hitting there with this, hitting there, look through the scope. Yep, that's it. 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 Deal with it. That's the trigger. That's what you need to deal with because it's going to keep coming up naturally, especially in spaces of a higher frequency. Everything else is going to become distorted and your truth is always going to be shown. What are you doing? What have you been doing? You have to have that. I remember having that conversation with myself plenty of fucking times. I remember having the powerless conversation. I feel powerless if I ain't got no money. I feel powerless if I can't do this. But I got to do this, this, and this. And I kept myself in this scatterbrain thought process. And that scatterbrain thought process was followed by everything in my space being of scatterbrain. Because at the end of the day, beat myself the fuck up. If thinking about, I was like, nigga, if I thought about all this shit being the same exact shit or the same exact interface, I could have been so far. But I had to get myself out of that mindset. That's another thing. That's another false perception you're going to have to shed. That I wish that I knew this back in 1996 or I knew this back in 2003. No. If you knew it back in 2003, it'd be a whole different set of events. Still, it's always going to be a different set of events. The grandpa effect. If somebody went back and go kill your granddad, and you still here, how the fuck does that work? If you go back and make your mom meet your dad, something else gonna happen with your dad. You don't understand you don't understand the basis of the emotional. You don't understand the emotional channel where the game through. My mother went through deep shame, insecurities, rejection wounds, abandonment issues, neglect wounds, and then created the portal for me to come through. All of those things fed into my entire life. This discourse, this distaste, this hatred was basically just being threatened. Anything based on a feminine aspect threatened the shit out of me. I felt like that's why I became the bad guy. I was like, nigga, I'm trying to use money to be the catalyst to keep every motherfucker around me. I'm trying to use this money aspect to keep everybody around me. That gives me the perspective of me being independent. That gives me the perception in order for me to reflect or deflect anything that's going to challenge my independence, challenge this freedom, challenge this illusion that I built, this false perception, this false mind that I built. But I still need something. I need something to value this. I need something to validate this at all times. I need things around me based on that space to keep me validating the same thought process in my life. I need it around me. I want it around me. Even if it irritates me. I think irritation is normal because I grew up in a environment based on conflict. So it's normal to me. It's only normal because I'm only absorbing the poison that is already of me. That's why it doesn't faze me. That's why I don't look at it that way. Self-reflection. Self-reflection, self-assessment leads to your self-care. You can't get to that self-care regimen until you get to that self-reflection, that self-assessment. That's why when you go to you say, oh, I gained some weight. Okay. Followed by the assessment. Why did I gain weight? Then you get to the point where it's the self-care to go through the routine. I'll be all right. Wait, I got this. Or I can do this. I ain't got time to do this. You talk yourself away from the ledge. Every time, so many times I talk myself away from the ledge. I talk myself away from jumping. I talk myself away from taking that jump. What made me stop taking that jump? The perception of others. Yo, you know that's gonna be some hard ass work over there. You start doing that. You know you ain't gonna have no days off to yourself. You know you ain't gonna be able to celebrate holidays. You know this gonna happen. You know this gonna happen. You know you ain't gonna be able to do this, this, and this. Damn, you right. I enjoy my days off. What I was admitting to myself was, nigga, I was admitting that I enjoy being lazy. Assessment. I was admitting that I enjoy being lazy. I was admitting that I enjoyed keeping my mind in a disorganized state so that I can have this sense of when I do something, it feels good because I did it against the odds. But if the odds are always in my favor and the odds are a reflection of my unseen, and if those odds are always in my favor for me to continue doing the same shit, but now I'm getting tired of the same pattern. I'm getting tired of the same habitual steps that I keep taking. Maybe it's time for me to check my odds. These odds are too low. The odds is way too fucking low. Therefore, my standards are too fucking low. My standards are based in fear. They're based in I'm in a codependent narrative. So as long as I keep my standards down here, everything that comes into my space, I can be like, at least I have this, the physical byproduct. Multiple levels of that aspect of that intimacy. Where did you learn intimacy? Where did you learn to be intimate with yourself? Only based to the level of masturbating fucking egos, making them feel good. You didn't feel it from your heart because it wasn't warm. You felt it from your root chakra. You felt it based on survival. From the heart, it radiates and it's like it's a cooling feeling. I've been vibrating all fucking week. Been vibrating and been high all fucking week. Embracing that, I'm like, nigga, this shit feels great. Every time I do something, every time I do something now, my heart hits that iron. Y'all know the Iron Man scene when the nigga first found a new element, put it in his chest. That's what my chest felt like. That's what my chest feels like at all times. I look for that feeling. I love that feeling because it lets me know that I'm on the right track. Whatever gets shaken off, I assess immediately. It's almost as you now shed the false mind, you remove the handicap or the limiter. Go watch Ultraman on Netflix when they did the new one, when they kept taking that nigga's limiter off. You're removing the limitation. You're removing the limiter. You're unlocking your full force of your power. Your full force of your power based on where you release it at, because you release it down here in that fear zone. And that's why you release it down here so it can naturally take its position and starts rising up. So it has to be released. You got to let that A-bomb go. You got to let that hydrogen atom bomb go and allow it to eradicate everything. But no memories, lessons. No memories, lessons. What did you learn? I remember looking at every memory from my childhood in an example. The good years, when I was up till I was about 8 years old. The good years. I remember my pops always recording us to send the video back to his father. I remember him always out in the yard, taking the yard look fucking amazing. at all times, flowers, everything. He was building the space that he remembered from when he spent time with his father. So what lesson did I learn? In order for me to have my space, I got to create my space. What am I willing to do to create my space? What is my space built on? My pops always said out of his mouth that he moves through fear. So everything that he built was through fear. So now understanding that aspect, doing my shadow work, going deep in depth, I noticed that every space that I ever built was based on fear. I noticed every job that I was in was based in fear. That's why every time that I had something good into that space or something good came that was challenging me in my fears, I would self-sabotage it. So we go into the aspect of self-sabotage. I would self-sabotage it. I wasn't ready for that frequency. I wasn't ready for that level. I wasn't ready to take that accountability and responsibility because of what would come with it. It's easy to call yourself a god. It's easy to call yourself a goddess. It's easy to call yourself a king, a queen. It's easy because you're using it as an identity. But using an example of me creating my space as a god creates. An alchemist brings things from the most putrid sense and brings things and makes shit turns lead into gold. So I had to really look at myself, and for me to even carry that energy, I had to create something. What am I creating? What have I created? Why did I create it? Go think about, remember when Bender on Futurama had the people was stuck out there in space and he became their god? That's what you keep doing with your space. Why did you create it? Why did you create these avenues? Why did you create these emotional avenues for yourself? That's self-reflection. That's self-assessment on that deep level, that depth to yourself. Why did you create? Where did the creation or the aspects of how you created that emotional timeline for yourself? Why did you create it? Where did it get created from? That's where that vulnerability, intimacy comes into. Most of us get to a point when it comes to, I remember a lot of times going in my shadow work, and I get to a point to where I felt good about myself. And because I already felt bad, trigger came up, felt some type of way. So I would go deep enough to feel good. So I go deep enough to release. I would go deep enough to release. Deep enough to go jack that shit off and then release it. But for me to sit there and retain it and hold it and take that emotional thread and pull that shit all the way back in, similar to when you think about semen retention, and you take that shit all the way in and you pinch or you do a Kegel, or you pull up on your ass and you allow the energy to go all the way up. You allow the energy to go all the way up here, and it hits up here into the subconscious. It hit up here in the subconscious, change things every fucking time. Because you learning, I'm minding my energy, my breath. That shit go all the way the fuck up. What is it? What is that energy of you from your root gonna release? What is it gonna bring to the surface? It may make you feel worse. It may make you feel better. It may make you feel some type of way. It may make you sit down in your living room on a vacation and you sitting in your living room in the dark listening to a Kid Cudi album. Sitting in there in the dark, damn near depressed, sitting there with yourself, crying for no fucking reason, not eating, not moving from that space, in that darkness. And I'm saying that from the fucking point of experience. You got to go through that point. This shit is not, if you've never seen a Tyler Perry movie, Go watch Why Did I Get Married, the second one, and y'all know everybody's seen that meme when they got Janet Jackson sitting up there and that her whole face looked fucking horrible because she got met with the masculine that forced her to challenge herself. That's what you gonna go through. That's intimacy. You've had it plenty times in your life before. Ask yourself, why the fuck did you cry during sex? Why do you think that during sex, in the physical aspect, you feel so euphoric in your emotions? Because that's a healing instrument based on how you learn how to cycle your energy and how high the altitude of your energy goes. Monitor yourself. Everything down here is a tool. If every time you have sex or you release, see where it goes to. Follow it. Where does the energy go to? A lot of motherfuckers stuck in their root chakra based on survival. So the immediate thing that you're thinking about, this is where we got to get deeper into the aspects of ourselves. You sitting there in that space with yourself. You've never made a real plan. That void you trying to fill is based on survival. That void you trying to fill is based on that survival of what you lost. You still trying to make some roots. So go back and look at the relationships and what you did in each one of the relationships and reassess yourself to bring balance back to yourself. Because as we open with, remember, your relationship, remember, everything comes down here in duality. It's automatically balanced. It's automatically balanced. It's automatically going to be balanced. Equal parts. Those equal parts are based on the depth of you going inside of yourself. So if you this is how you start looking at these aspects. Every time you come into a space and you having a conversation, this is how it's going to go. This is an example of how that shit's going to work. When you go into earlier relationships, think about your earlier relationships, think about your friendships, think about your homegirls, your homeboys, everybody that's around you. Y'all have an argument, it's two little kids having an argument. Your inner children are now arguing. They both sniping to see who can kill they're both sniping to see who can shut the other one down first. All right, cool. Now start assessing the conversation with yourself. How deep you get into the conversation with yourself. Now you go into that space, and this is why it's always important to understand where you are at emotionally. Has nothing to do with where you are at physically. There are motherfuckers out here right now that something happened to them when they were 5 years old and they never left that point. And now they in their damn 60s and they still react like a 5-year-old. So every argument you having with them, they battling you like a 5-year-old. Take that reflection into yourself. The traumatic event, have you dealt with it? Have you dealt with that event that happened when you was at that age? Because if you haven't, every single time their emotions rise to bring back to balance, you will be arguing from that point. So no matter what somebody says to you in that space, you got to be mindful of where you're coming from. Because if two injured motherfuckers come together, two inner children that are both injured come together, it's going to be conflict until the conflict cancels it out. Ooh, and let's go have sex. Ooh, and let's go have some drinks. And then you're going to be back in the same position next year. But when you come into that space, especially you come into sessions with me, and we're exposing those aspects and those points, I understand whether it's the adolescent. I understand whether we got to get to the adolescence healing first or the inner child healing first. I know the points. I've been to those points. I've studied. I went through those points. Not just from the experience that I've learned into those points, but I'm talking about like as I understood those points, I was open up to the entire space. That space opened up. The biases were falling away to see the different trajectories and the different paths. Not to go on them, but to understand where those points are at. Some points I had to go walk. Some points I didn't have to go walk because, okay, that point remind me. That's that emotional mapping. That was the emotional mapping that I got to in that podcast. A lot of you are using these emotional maps based on your traumas to keep you in that behavioral line of thought process. That's why you got motherfuckers mad about the vaccine. You the vaccine. You got motherfuckers talking about television. You're the first television. You're the first television because you looking through you viewing your world through your wounds. Your whole world become alive once you start accepting your wounds. I don't believe in none of this shit no more. That's the point you got to get to. You got to get to that point where you don't believe in shit. You don't believe in nothing. You are questioning everything. And the deeper that you get into that point is the more in-depth you get with inside of yourself. If I don't believe this, then in reflection for myself, in that reflection aspect, then I cannot believe that what happened the way that it happened. If you've seen American Gods, and we remember when they did the last season, and Shorty went in there when the bitch looked like she did the sour cream citizen. I ain't said one of those in a long time. The sour cream citizen jumped in the screen while she was in purgatory and tried to tell the story instead of seeing the story for what it was. That's what you're gonna have to. That's what you're doing, because you keep going back into that story with your inner child where that trauma happened, and you keep trying to change the story like it's your fault, or you're trying to take the same authority that you're trying to take in this current space for your situation to remain in that identity. You trying to take that identity back there. It don't exist back there. That's a wish and a hope. That's why when you thinking about your friends and family members, man, I got them ride or die motherfuckers I don't want nobody around me talking about riding and dying. Sorry, don't need you around me. What you riding and dying for? That's an identity I don't need around me. Especially if I say that, especially if I'm putting my claim into the power that I have, why would I need that? Need not, want not. I don't need that. I appreciate it if it comes into my space, because at a point in time I might need to learn from it, but I don't need it. Therefore, I'm not attached to it into that emotional aspect. Disclaimer: if you are in a vehicle and you are watching this and you are in motion, please sit down. If you rock with it, you know this. Y'all know how I talk. You're gonna have to get to that. Sit down, park. Sit down. Enjoy the vibe. But that's where the mindset that you getting into. So now, because this is how the depths of your motherfucker. See, I've had conversations for the last couple of weeks, and like motherfuckers saying like that every person that I've had a consultation with or dealt with or has had a regular conversation with, they always tell me the same thing, and it makes me. It's like I'm like, oh shit, that shit is great. I love it. But it's like it's a different space for me now, because I'm looking at it from, I'm like, damn, I now know why I cannot do what I'm doing now. As an example, I now know why I I now know why I did not do what I needed to do before. I can't have that wishful mindset. Because I would have pulled that comment, those comments, and people coming to me in that, I would have pulled that straight through the stream of the ego for my inner child to have attention. And I'd be sitting out here debating and arguing about stupid shit. That's where you get into. That's this level when you get into this work. You got to eradicate everything that you ever held on to. And that's how you going. Baba Dick Gregory said that shit the best. There's 3 rules for these glasses. There's 3 rules for these frames. 3 rules for these frames. Can't ever take them off. You no longer see things as what they are, as what they seem. You see them as what they are. And you can't force nobody else to put on them fucking glasses. You can't force nobody else to put on them fucking glasses. That means you can sit here in that space and say, hey, I'm doing this work. And it's like similar to you sat there with yourself. And because I remember doing it, I was like, yo, we all gonna go to the gym together. Yeah, we all gonna go work out and shit. Yeah, we all gonna go work out. First week, 2 niggas showed up late. Next week, 3rd nigga came. By the 4th, 6th week, they watching how I work out. None of them niggas showed up. Felt bad for a little bit. And I remember there was an old head in there. That nigga, old head, like, beard. He was like Ron Isley from the fucking Verses. Look, like, this nigga was like, yeah, you gonna have to do this shit by yourself. That old man said that shit to me. I was like, I ain't see that old man ever again. I knew that was an ancestor. I knew that was a spirit coming through. You gotta do this shit by yourself. That's the part that we got to get into with ourselves. This wandering around, because this is what's going to happen. As long as you're doing your work, what the energy is supposed to do, as you're cycling through your studies, as you're going through, it's all from the point of inner inflection and going inside of yourself in that aspect, going into yourself. Yeah. Yeah. Y'all go back to season 2. Nika J was in the shadow work episode. But you got to understand when you're getting into yourself, shutting everything down. You can't keep facing this shit with conflict. That's the being gentle with yourself and stop facing these things with conflict. There's a reason that it keep getting said to you. There's a reason that you get irritated and you mad. I remember being irritated with my mother for like damn near 3.5 fucking weeks off some shit that happened back in like 1980s. That shit that happened back in when I was in kindergarten. That shit came up and I was like, I'm mad at my mother all over again. I'm back in the space when I was in kindergarten, acting like a 5-year-old, I was 4. I was 4. I went to school early. I was 4 years old, mad as fucking. I was all mad all over again. But when it came time for me to try to go to explain that shit to my mother, that shit came out so chopped and screwed and so emotionally conflicted. Mom, why did you do this to me when I was 5? She didn't even remember it. What are you talking about? That made me even more upset. But the spirit was telling my ass, nigga, go sit the fuck down at the house. No one told you to go over there. Your ego told you to go over there. Your inner child said, oh, let's go get some attention. Your inner child told your ass to go over there. But because you're still holding on to that, you're still holding on to this visualized or this mirror aspect of what you thought your mother was supposed to be. You're still holding on to this mirror aspect of what you thought your pops was supposed to be. Think about those relationships, especially motherfuckers that have relationships where their pops was a Rolling Stone. And then you gonna look at your relationships totally different when you start assessing them. Every nigga that you was with cheated on you, or your pops was a Rolling Stone, and every chick that you ever with, you cheated on or they cheated on you. There's a reason for it. Why did it make you feel that way? You got to get back to the source. A lot of us move around, especially when it comes into the sexual traumas, when it comes into the avoidance, when it comes into the deeps of these wounds. You think you bucking up against people and you strong and you showing that false pride, that cowardly lying aspect. You threatened. You're threatened that somebody can come and tell you something that nobody else has told you. It doesn't match what everybody else told you. Everybody else told you that it was a good thing because they're still in the same space. Your circle, who's around you. I remember that thought process of loyalty in my circle, and it was like cagey. Everybody was in the same space, doing the same thing. And when new things came in, it filtered through really, really slowly. But that was it. I need things around me that's pushing me forward. I desire things around me that's pushing me forward. Take me out of my comfort zone, make me uncomfortable, make me face my shadow, make me trigger me. Please trigger me. If I could go back and change one thing, I would say, ooh. And I did. You know, you go back and do that recessive aspect. Have that conversation with your inner child, the nigga on the sniping post. Your inner child sitting on the sniping post, hitting your ass every time you get triggered. Where are they triggering you from? What's your inner child wearing? You don't even know what the hell your inner child wearing when they sitting up there on the sniping post. They got the shirt of the motherfucker that they got the shirt where they're ordained in looking just like that motherfucker that hurt you. So even in this is how we do this visualization in our subconscious mind. We keep it in our subconscious mind. You still activating from them old unseen aspects. That's what you're seeing through. So the moment that something comes into your space, and this is where we get into these fear aspects, think about the aspect of fear. Think about the aspect of fear. Every time something comes up that you think made some shit that was hard, where did it come from? I thought I would have to go to school all over again. I didn't. I told myself that shit. I told myself that shit all the time. Yo, I'm gonna go get this job over here, right? And I'm gonna do this over here. And then I'm gonna do this. I'm gonna get this house. I'm gonna go get the car. I'm gonna go do this. I'm gonna get my mom's a crib. I'm gonna go do this. I'm gonna do this. Then I'm gonna get to myself. Remember what I just told you, the frequency that you vibrating on. If I'm vibrating on the sense of my acceptance wound, my rejection wound, my neglect wound, where my mother neglected me, now in my mind, everything in my space, I'm going to prove that I'm not going to neglect them by the physical conduit. So my standard is only based upon where I'm at in that space. But in order for me to remain in that space of my mind, in my home base, my space has to be based in conflict to keep my perception or my false mind or my crutches active. So as long as there's conflict internally in my space, even when I'm in whatever relationship that I have, job, friend, whatever it may be, there must be a reflection of conflict. There must be something in that space that drives me to stay within my comfort zone. But the universe going to give you that, and the universe going to sprinkle in the way out. Because that's how you work. You going to get what you want, and exactly what you going to get, that thing that you've been wanting and needing in that space, and you don't get the tools on the other side. Here's the tools to build the bridge. Here's the door. Do I take the door or do I take this bridge? Do I build this bridge? Sometimes I need to build a bridge. Sometimes I need to go through the door. It's depending on where I'm at and if I understand myself. where I'm at with myself, wherever I assess myself. If I'm used to going through doors, then and bridges keep coming up, tools for bridges come. If tools for bridges keep coming up, it may be time for me to build some bridges. What are those bridges? To get over and into the next space with myself instead of just going through this door. Door number 1, door number 2, or a bridge. In my mind, it may take longer to build this bridge, but I got to start here. I got to stop going through these doors just because they're there and I can open them. That false sense in myself of opening up a door because I'm used to opening up doors because I can take niggas through the doors. That bridge, just like I've said this before, that door is biometrically sound to you. Iris scan, thumbprint, handprint, voice activated to you. The reason that that door does not open is because you are not in the right tone of that voice. That's why when you speaking your intent, this when we go into the aspect of speaking your intentions and shit come up in your life, but it didn't take you any further nowhere, and you like, but I got what I wanted, but it's not what I wanted. That means it's wrong. No. What was the root of your intentions? What was the root of your intention? If the root of my intention is to remain in the behavior of a deflective, detached, emotionally unavailable, unable to speak, passive aggressive, abandoned wound and rejections and in that moniker, and I hide behind being a real nigga, then everything I bring into that space is going to be based on making me struggle as a real nigga. But if I want to say that I'm a god, if I want to say that I'm fucking Lucifer Samdi, if I want to say if I want to own this energy, then I got to start doing that internal reflection. I know what I need to do. You know what you need to be doing. You know when it's time to sit the fuck down, but you ignore your body. Therefore, you ignore the emotional response. Therefore, you ignore the behavioral pattern. Therefore, you bypass the behavioral tag. Therefore, you ignore the pattern. Therefore, you just keep doing the same habit. The craziest part about it is in your space, when you're going through your healing work, family, friends, all of these individuals, they going to show it to you. Some of y'all didn't have those experiences. Sitting there like, oh my God, like, really? That's what you mad at? I don't understand. You understand. You know where that's coming from. You know where that's coming from. Say the answer. Whisper it say it to the audience. Say what it was. Now, look at that answer and go sit with it real quick. Guarantee that answer is going to unlock some shit within inside of yourself. I remember having a conversation with my brother. Brother's in Alabama now. He hasn't called or texted me or anything since he got the $3,000 about 6 years ago. And he thinks that I care about the $3,000. I really don't. Already wrote it off, made $3,000 over and over and over again. Don't care. But I remember the last conversation with him. And he said some shit to me that during that day, I was sitting there in my apartment, sitting there crying, listening to Kid fucking Cudi, Man on the Moon, to whichever one had Gorilla Zoe on it, and Gorilla Zoe did that Lost song. Yeah, whatever time that came out. And I remember sitting there, and I'm listening to what my brother said. He was like, I got to prove to Pops that I can do it my way. That he wasn't right. And at that point, I remember saying something to my brother. I was like, bro, it wasn't about Pops being right. Because there's a lot of things Pops said that he was spot on. And there was a lot of things Pops said that were based on deflection. I learned from the deflective aspects from my pops, as well as the spot on aspects from my pops. Because without those deflections, I couldn't get the balanced aspect of the introspects that I needed to learn inside of that space. I couldn't get those lessons. Everything's within balance. You're always in the right position in the center. You just to keep deciding to look left or look right. It's time for you to let me look at my life real quick. I'm not where I want to be at. Why am I not where I want to be at? What is this perception of me not being where I want to be at? What is it based on? Why do I feel like I'm racing? Why do I feel like I'm racing? This connects to a pattern of me always feeling like I need to race. What does the pattern of me always feeling like I need to race to protect or provide something? Masculine wound. Where will my masculine wounds come from? Daddy issues, uncle issues, mother issues that were narcissistic, a narcissistic mother, a mother that lies. That's a masculine wounds. What about the feminine wounds? Why can I not seem to be open past this point of just using emotional taglines? Why, when I do get emotional, I feel the need to fill the void when I become emotional instead of allowing that space to open up? Mother wounds, feminine aspects that I haven't dealt with, aspects that I haven't talked to myself about with, conversations that I'm not having that keep coming out as conflicts, challenges. Let me go back and assess. Let me go learn. Let me take that time to sit with myself and learn. Let me open myself up. That level of, if I don't believe anything, that means I don't know shit. I still don't know shit. This shit comes when it needs to come. I'm open to accepting when it comes, as it comes. If it's going to be based in assessment. Let me learn from it. Everything is your lesson. When it's no longer needed, it falls away naturally. Hup, I don't need it no more. That can fall away. Don't need it. We got to challenge those attachments. But it made me feel so good. Did it make you any better? How did it make you better? What lesson did it teach you? What did it bring into your space? You'll stop holding on to it. I remember so many times I would hold on to the last relationships, friendships, friends, all that shit, as a just in case. That's what most of us do. You hold on to people just as a just in case. Because you still stuck on every other time you was in that space, that was your just in case. The lesson that taught me that was 7 years ago, was looking at somebody that actually did that shit all the time and kept people around them as just in cases. As just in cases. They kept relationship, they kept people around them as just in cases. If I don't like the way that sounds, I can go over here. If I don't like the way this sounds, I'm gonna go over here. But I don't like but this is what you keep doing as you keep trying to build out this imaginary bridge. Think about it like this. You don't like what was said to you inside of the space where you're supposed to be learning. Now you go to one of your safe spaces. Go one of your safe havens. That safe haven is no longer working. Why? Because you've attached the energy inside of that space that has distorted your frequency. Now you go into that space over there. Now you irritated, mad. You looking at them like they crazy. You trying to coach them. You trying to teach them some shit. They're not listening. So guess what you're going to do next? As long as you was avoided, as long as you inside the avoided wound, guess what you're going to go do next? As long as you're in that neglect wound, guess what you're gonna go do next? You're gonna feel the need to go fill that space with another fucking person. The next person is only gonna be the carbon copy of where you at now. So now you sitting there like, damn, I got a lot of people around me, but they all seem to be doing the same shit with their lives. How did I do this? They all reflecting you in some way, shape, or form. If you can see them, you're on that frequency. You're looking for yourself in other individuals. I'll give you an example of how that shit worked. I never had to do probation after my year and 6. But mentally, I was still locked in that behavior. So everybody that came around me was like, felony on probation. So me seeing them, it felt good for me to tell them that, it felt good for me to give them this story of how I triumphed over my probation, over my jail time and the shit that I did. It felt good to tell them that. It felt good. But I could never, for the life of me, give them the information that they needed to get out of it. And even when I did give them the information, they couldn't take it in. So then I had to realize, I was like, let me look at what we're doing and how we met in this space. Let me really assess the space. Some people like to be broken. Some people like the attention from their wounds. Some people like the attention from their wounds. Some people like the attention they get from being broken. Some people like the perception that they get to feed in. Some people love it. They need it in their life because they're not ready to go to that next point. It's going to hit you to a point of irrefutation. And it's going to force you to step up out of that space. And the more that you step up out of that space, here's that key. The more that you start internalizing and learning yourself, getting intimate with yourself, that means sitting down with yourself, getting really intimate with yourself. But you really get intimate with yourself. Every time you go back into that space, you're going to notice something different. I remember a conversation with Beloved. And she was like, I see why you don't go. I was like, thank you. Took a wild point to get to the point of like the external noise, the nigga antisocial. How the fuck am I antisocial? I'm a whole fucking occult psychologist and I do shadow work for a fucking living. How am I antisocial? It's just that the standard of how I use my energy changed. It's the standard of where I invest my energy into changes. As you start doing that internal, you get real intimate with your energy. You know your energy. You know your energy is the shit. You confident in your energy being the shit. You know where you at. You know your energy. You know what you can do. Now that you know what you can do, now it's time to set up your standard and accept your standard so the boundaries are naturally created. I ain't got to say no more. My energy does it for me. I ain't got to say yes anymore. My energy does it for me. I ain't got to make the moves. The energy does it for me. But I have to assess where I'm at, what I'm doing. I can't see it as wrong or right. I must see it as positive and negative. I must bring it into harmony, that peace. So if somebody has a perception of me being this monster or this asshole or whatever the fuck they want me to be, have some, have not. You're right. You're right. You're right. You'll write you to death. I'll accept it and move the fuck on because now they can't tap in. They can't use the behavior. They can't use the identity. They can't use that old aspect of themselves anymore to tap into you. When you shift from the lusting aspect is being accepted based on the identity, but not tapping into the internal aspect. That's the lusting aspect. The love aspect, you can accept everybody. And I have unconditional love for everybody. But there's conditions to interact with me. There's a price you're going to have to pay to interact with me. I have unconditional love and understanding and compassion for everybody. But there's a price that you got to pay to come into this space. That's my standard. My standard is on that price. So now that I have that understanding, now I can create the conduits outside of myself in the physical world, in the physical realm, based on my purpose, based on that aspect. Because that's within your purpose. So now, because I remember earlier on in fucking lectures, and I'm making posts on Facebook, making posts on Instagram. I remember there'd be these old head niggas coming in there, be like, how can you charge your people all this information, charge these people for the information? That's what's wrong. That's what the white man doing to us. I was like, and I broke it down to the old man. I was like, the price is not based on anything of an external aspect. It's based on the investment. If I give somebody something for free and they know they have access to it for free, then 9 times out of 10, they're never going to apply it. So think about relationships in that same manner. If I can go into a space with people and they know I'm always going to be there because that space is built on whatever wound I was stuck in, then why the heck would they need to do anything? Why would they need to do anything? Why would they, if they know I'm going to run over there the moment that they say something happened, why would they need to do anything? They ain't got to do shit. They know I'm going to show up. But when I stop showing up to every argument, when I stop showing up to the events, knowing there was going to be an argument or whatever, then the true aspect came out to the surface. That's when can't believe that nigga didn't show up. This is a whole family event. That nigga didn't show up. This is a whole fucking funeral. That nigga didn't show up. I don't talk to y'all on a regular basis. Y'all definitely call me a devil worshiper. So if I even came in there and said, yeah, I already knew they were about to pass or whatever anyway, y'all gonna call me a devil worshiper any damn way. Y'all talking about this. I remember the day the motherfucker said that my grandfather passed. I remember having a conversation with my mom 2 weeks prior. And I was like, she was like, your grandfather in the hospital. I said, yeah, he about to transition. And it blew my mind when my mom said, yeah, I felt it too. I was like, yeah. I remember the day of my grandfather's funeral. I called my mother. I was like, you all right? You good? I was like, you sure you good? She was like, yeah. Everybody want me to come out there. But I was like, Mom, don't go because you know how you are when it comes to your emotions. My mother is learning her empathic aspects. You know how you are when it comes to that energy in that space. Sit at the house, watch some shows that he used to watch, chill, do it at the house. My mom sat at the house. I remember I was doing a live one morning. One of my cousins came up to the live. Why you didn't show up? I went by your mom's house and all of this. I remember later on, he hit me up in my inbox. I was like, I already talked to my mother. My mother's good. But yeah, you didn't come. I was like, you remember that time when I was telling everybody about what I found out about my mom, my father, and things of that nature? And it was a really emotional time for me. 9 times out of 10, that might be what you're feeling right now. You're feeling all of those regrets coming up. He was upset, but 4 days later, on schedule, he was like, damn, I didn't even think about it that way. Because when you go into these spaces with these people on that old projection of yourself, you got to understand it's based on your old frequency. So if you feel irritated, or monitor your voice, your breath, what you eat, even down to what you eat. You can be sitting there in your fucking house you can be sitting in your house and you eating fruits and mangoes and eating healthy, and you getting up and you doing some good shit for yourself. But then you start going around the wrong individuals. Guess what you're feeding? You're feeding that energy. Low vibrational energy needs low vibrational food. So monitor your food intake. If you're going from, I'm eating good every day, I'm eating food all the days, and then you notice that you stop eating food, monitor your energy. That's how you start to learn your energy, get intimate with your energy. We have to remove the external aspect as our primary source. The external aspect is simply the byproduct of something that's already going on inside of me. The internal aspect is already what's going on inside. So if I'm feeling in this moment, if I'm feeling in this greatest realm of despair in my world, then that means there's some despair coming up inside of me. The only way I can see the despair, the only way I can see niggas over here talking about, oh my God, the vaccine and mask and killing people and shit. The only way I can see that and react to it in that emotional tagline, that emotional response to keep me in the same behavior. Because motherfuckers big and bad, cowardly, lying in that shit, that false sense of courage and that false sense of pride and that identity. I'm a black man in America. I'm a black woman in America. These niggas is racist. The fuck is racism? Ask yourself real questions. What is racism? The preservance of a culture, the preservance. So if I look at racism in that narrative, and I'm saying it's based in, so if my perception is based in fear, if my perspective is based in survival, and I have my behavior based in avoidance or fear, then if I go up into that emotional rant, and now something comes into my space that is meant to police, what was the historical event for police? To maintain intellectual property of the masters. Who are the masters? The one that masters your emotions, the emotional aspect. You gotta take it high. So you looking at that, you like, what the fuck? They only gonna pop up based on your behavior. I posted a video earlier, and there is an entire white congregation, and this white lady in these braids. I don't know where the fuck she got the Jamaican accent from, but she's singing Lauryn Hill song. Whole choir singing a Lauryn Hill song. I'm looking like that's all they can do. They're only going to be that furthest. You already locked up. So of course you need something in this space that's going to be the reflection of you getting locked up. So now you got to ask yourself a question to get yourself out of the human construct, so you can actually start reflecting in your life. And then you're going to ask the question, be like, well, I know what they are, but what am I? That's a projection of myself too. They're acting in fear. They're acting in self-preservation. They're acting in false pride and courage. The reason that they got into this position is because I'm acting in fear. Don't want to admit it. They don't want to admit it. They don't want to admit it. I don't want to admit it. We're both in fear. We're both trying to maintain a behavior. Hey, maybe I need to sit down with myself. Maybe this is my reality check. Time to check my perception. Getting intimate with yourself. You're so quick. We become so quick to release and maintain a behavior and the identity. We become so quick to release, stay in this maintaining of this behavior and this identity that we become comfortable in, because that was the best thing that happened to us. We had some of the best times happen to us in that sense. But now you noticing to yourself, you're like, I ain't got the same feeling anymore. It didn't burnt out. It's light. You are now literally through Beetlejuice. You want to go talk to the trees. You want to go into these higher aspects of yourself. You got to dissolve the false mind entirely. That whole false mind aspect. All that shit got to be assessed. It's not this. I'm gonna throw it away. Is you got to allow yourself to go through the state of forgiveness, go through that state of acceptance, and allow it to fall away by itself. The umbilical cord cuts itself. You can speed up the process. You can do a cut the cord. It speeds up the process, or it clears out the space, but you still gonna have to deal with what comes up inside of that space. There's no quick fix to you doing your work. There's no quick fix or no quick to do your work, because you still got to deal with the results. We talked about that last week. You want that $1 million? What does $1 million look like? How does $1 million move? You just stuck on the feeling of the look of $1 million because you looked at a nigga, got that shit up to his ear. Or you looked at $1 million because you saw a purse, or you saw something in a physical aspect. What does $1 million look like to you in the internal aspect? You got to find that mirror for that. What is that value to that in that aspect for yourself? That's the mirror that you have to find. That's what you got to define. I remember when I got to the point I was like, I don't even know what a fucking $1 million looks like. I don't know what $1 million look like for real in real life. I don't know what I would do with $1 million. I could say what I would do with $1 million, but I don't know how the hell I would, because I had to haul them double up mentality. I was like, I ain't got $1 million till I got $2 million. So in reality, I only got $500,000. So I had to be really honest with myself and like, if I get $1 million and they hit it with taxes, that means I might get $750,000. I ain't got really $750,000, but I got like $375, $325. So I had to get real honest with yourself. You got to knock yourself down. That's why you came down here, to be humbled. If you notice, every time you are not humble with your energy to your truth of yourself, that's when you lose shit. If you notice that when you are not humble in the space where it's time for you to learn, that's when you lose focus. If you notice when it's time for you got a teaching moment and you're not humble, that's when you lose focus. You only lose focus when you lose the ability of your own humility and your integrity within yourself. The fear of something coming out that you don't want to come out. Not a line on your timeline. You should be in fear of not bringing it to the surface. Can't run away from this shit. Can't. You seeing it as it is. You can't force them to see it the way you want them to see it. You seeing it the way that it is. The only thing you can do is sit there and really basically reflect. You're not where you said you're not where you thought you were based on the external aspect. Because without that external aspect, where are you at? Humbling ass moment. Most humbling moment. I've told that story many times before. Like, not having anywhere to go was one of the most humbling moments into the space. It made me understand it opened me up to understanding on an entirely different level. It made me really challenge. I was like, I'm no longer going to put myself into a position. I'm no longer going to say things in a position only based to keep some things around me. Whatever happens, I know that there's no going back within that mentality. That's what I mean when I always say there's no going back. There's no going backwards. You can, what you think, and what people think they're doing when they're going backwards, you're actually just staying still. If you've ever noticed that when you think you're going backwards or you're reverting back and you start that lost feeling, you're not really going anywhere. Because now you're sitting there, what you're doing unconsciously is you're sitting inside of the emotions. That's why it gets so heavy. That's why you get so angry. That's why you get so upset. That's why you get so depressed, because the emotions are now pushing and you're trying to hold, you're not allowing them to go through. You're the restriction. So now you got to create something. This is what we've done. This is what you do when you're stuck in the trauma field, that the lower aspects of yourself. You're going to put something in that space over here to try to block it off. One of your old go-tos: friend, family, job, escaping in your job. Exactly. Your friend, your family, your job, new friendship, new relationship, clothes, all that other shit. And you're going to put that right there. Okay, cool. I'm going to put this here and it's going to block this for a little bit. But all that's doing is absorbing it. So whatever this meant to you in that space emotionally. So use an example. This, and now we don't get into the aspects of that. The shadow, I've been talking that shadow work and addiction aspect. Now we look at our addictions and our urges. Your urges are only the physical conduit of the avoidance. Your urges are only the physical conduit based on that lower level of the healing narrative, that lower venting, so you can heal a little bit. That's why motherfuckers like, don't drink no alcohol because the alcohol is bad and it summoned up the spirits. No, it augments you out of the space and brings you into the emotional state of the truth of yourself. That's where it takes you to. This is why when I talk to my clients, and if they have addictions, and I'm like, all right, cool. For the next 5 days, you ain't doing this for the next 5 days. Next 5 days, you ain't doing this. Don't do this. Whatever addictive, because as I'm doing the assessing, I'm looking for the addictive aspects, and I'm not going to take away the most external aspect, such as smoking, drinking, getting whatever it is. I'm going to find, okay, that's a catalyst used to keep in that space, but I need to find the root to that. Now, that's why I got to remove that part first. And then I'll also say, hey, you're not doing this or this. You ain't doing that for a week. Motherfuckers have lost their whole fucking mind. You mean go home and look, when you step outside of the pattern and you look at your pattern, the things that lead you back into your pattern will always come up, because those are the correspondence to the patterns. When we looking at our patterns, that's how you get to understand your pattern and the root or the emotional catalyst or the emotional wound to the pattern. There will always be an argument, a conversation, an event. This is how we start reading everything around you as a damn sign, giving you the exact sign that you need. You ignore it. Here's the result. Here's the result. Here's the next result. Here's the next result. all leading you back to the same damn sign. You know, big time for you to sit the hell down, but you didn't want to sit down. You felt that I don't know what to do if I sit down. I'm not that intimate with myself yet. I remember sitting with myself not being able to sit down. I wasn't intimate with myself yet. As much time as I spent alone, craziest aspect of it, as much time as I spent to my damn self, the reason I spent so much time to myself was it was based on avoidance. Because I was doing it unconsciously. Until I'm consciously alone with myself, I'm not self-assessing. So since I was unconsciously sitting with myself, I was basically doing it based on deflection and avoidance. Because I'll always say the same damn shit. See, niggas ain't calling, checking up on me, just to keep me in the same behavior. This is why I do what I fuck I do and stay by my. That's why I stay to myself any damn way. Niggas don't be checking up on me or calling me. But what am I attracting into my space as I say that? That's the hope narrative. Because I'm saying it from a point of I'm hoping somebody comes to check on me. I don't care. That means I do care. It wasn't until I became comfortable with saying, like, I don't need nobody to check on me right now. This is a perfect time. Ain't nobody calling me. Ain't nobody hitting my phone up. Ain't nobody texting me. What am I going to do with this time? I need to take, this is a perfect time to take time to myself. Let me learn how to create in this space what I really need to tap into. Because on that side of the level, you start doing that, you start moving forward in that space. And then the direction, the path that you're going to see, now you get to see consciously. You seeing niggas over here, they'll call you for this, they called you for that, they did this, and you start seeing that line. Going down another path. When you sit the same damn synonymous algorithm in that same path, same emotional aspects within the path, because they all based in your emotion. Now you say, the next conversation you have with yourself is, I'm about to get into me in my healing journey. I'm about to go lose some weight. I'm about to go work out. I'm about to go do this. Same frequency of thought. Now it's just going to be externalized. Them same people, same places, are the same things you cling to on both sides of that polarity. On this side, when you angry, this when you doing shit, when you under anger, under duress. I'm not doing this no more under anger and duress. Okay, cool. You made out this announcement. You ain't going to do it because you angry. So what about when you in a calm state? You got to learn how to pull that. Just like I just said, you got to pull that through. You got to take that anger, that trigger point, and pull it into the calm space. And pull it into the calm space. And learn how to deal with it in the calm space, the higher space. You got to learn how to take that sadness, that aspect, and pull it into that space that's in the higher aspect of yourself. You got to go through the process of allowing yourself to get, I'm getting berated by all this other shit. Everything trying to take me off this. This is your path. This is your work. All I am is the only thing as a healer, as a teacher, all I do is lead you back to you. You got to start being around individuals that lead you back to you. And that shit sucked when you start being around people in earlier on aspects. I remember motherfuckers saying, nigga, what about you? What about you? And it was when I got to the higher aspects, when I was in management and I was around the managing partners and figureheads in the jobs, these motherfuckers did not give a fuck about what the fuck happened. They were like, nigga, what about you? That was the lesson that I had to learn in that higher up when I was in that space. They weren't looking at me no more. It was no more of the space of mother like, man, it's gonna be all right, man. These bitches out here stupid, and parents and family and all that. It was no more of that. No more of that shit came. It was no more of that around me anymore. I was in a different space. I learned that in this space, I can't bring anything into this space. This space is designed for the things to come into this space on its at what it needs to come in there to teach me some shit. So all those mirrors started looking at me, and I'm like, oh shit, nigga, I don't like the way the fuck I look right now. I don't like this direction that this is turning. Inner child gets scared. Oh my God, inner child. Come here, Carlos. I'm gonna hold you. Come here. We good. We got this. I had to have that conversation. You're becoming that parent. That's when these parental wounds come up of your mother not being there, how your mother treated you, how your father treated you. That's when that's what you're becoming. You're now learning those aspects. It's like you sitting in one of the best visualizations. Imagine you sitting in the middle of a fucking room, and you got you and your inner child sitting in the middle of the room, and you got all of these replaying events going on around you, looking like fucking horror flicks. That's where you get to. That's one of the many reflections that I pulled up out of many people in doing this intense shadow work with them. That's the type of shit that you gonna see. I've passed out like 16 mirror rituals over the last 3 weeks. Some people never knew what a mirror ritual was. Some people first time deal with a mirror ritual. Other people hit me like, nigga, I cried. I had a whole grown man cry. I'm sitting here, for the first 5 minutes of the video call, he was like, do you have to see my face? I was like, nah, you good, bro. Do what you need to do. At about 15 minutes into the call, he was like, fuck it. Nigga was sitting there. He was like, I have not cried in 10 years. I look back and I remember I was like, nigga, damn, I did that shit before. I know what that shit feels like. If I don't know it, in the aspect of like, I'm not searching to try to find a common connection. Because if I'm looking for that connection, I'm really looking for an attachment. That means I'm gonna sit there in that space, and I'm not going to they're not going to go to where they need to go. And that's what happens a lot of times with us in our spaces, where you got people around you, you got individuals, these things around you that are being removed from your space, but you keep trying to keep it in there. You keep trying to keep those same thoughts of your unseen, the things you ain't dealt with, the things you ain't having conversations about. Those are the things you come to a point to realize where you're like, if I'm not having this conversation with myself, and they're not having that conversation about this, that is the only reason that they exist in my space. Because the moment that I start talking about it, they get uncomfortable. They say we don't talk about that. They say that I'm crazy. They say that you're all of these things. And now I start seeing the repeats of what I've said or what people have said to me to maintain this damn tether. So I've been grounded inside of this space this entire time based on this tether, locked in this space with myself. Now I'm seeing it for the first time. Like, damn, I didn't know it was that long. I didn't know it was that deep. That's the perception of that false mind. That's that letting go of that. This is you getting intimate with yourself. This is allowing yourself to truly be vulnerable. This is you seeing yourself naked. This is the aspect of when Bobby Ian was talking about the metaphysics of love, when it was like, you gotta love yourself. The true aspect of love is nothing coming to you. No, nothing. Because you already have that. You're learning those aspects within inside of yourself. So now when you're inside of that space and you looking at people, that shit changes. You stop going in the lustful aspect. But you gotta, I had to let that go. You're gonna have to let that shit go. Because that's what can lead, that's what's gonna leave you, that's what'll leave you locked in the behavior. That's what can leave you locked in that behavior and that behavioral aspect of yourself of saying, because then you're gonna go back and forth, but like, I guess they didn't do this. Because you're pulling from somewhere. 1 second, let me go pee. Oh my God, I need the toilet. You stepping into these understandings of yourself and shifting yourself out of this space. Give one aspect of it, got one aspect. I remember looking at myself in a certain space with myself where I got so far ahead in my life. Everything was going great. Everything was so great and gracious and grand. And I felt good. I felt good, but I still felt this sense of stuck. I had this sense of being stuck. There was a conversation that I was avoiding. I didn't know I was avoiding the conversation. I got through a couple of levels of my train of thought with myself, advancing. But then I got to my ancient self. I got to the ancient aspects. Ancient studies, Gnostic studies, releasing from my body and shit. And a lot of my dreams kept coming up. It was like I kept having dreams about, I had different dreams of my mother's house, my parents' house, but in different formats. Like every time I went to my mother's house, it was something different. Every time I went to my mom's house, different house. It was in the same space, different house, or in a different space, same house, different rooms. I'm like, where the fuck are these extra rooms coming from? All this bullshit. Every time that I woke up, I felt lost and alone as shit. And I felt this need for milk and cheese and shit. I don't know why, but it was like based in the milk and nurturing milk, mother's milk. And then I remember some shit happened, and then all of a sudden I ended up at my mother's house. Didn't want to go there. Don't know how the fuck I showed up there, but it was a much needed conversation I needed to have with my moms. Much needed conversation I needed to have with my moms. It was from the point where I accepted, I acknowledged, and I accepted, but I did not yet apologize to my mother about my pops, my father. I didn't do the apology aspect. I didn't thank her. So I remember in that point, I said to her, I was like, Mom, I don't want to even, and she got a little upset. She got all misty-eyed and teary-eyed, but I was like, I can understand why you did what you did based with Pops versus my father. I understand. I have an understanding, and I'm open. Most important part, I'm open to if you want to assess and talk about it, but I'm saying I'm thanking you because without you shifting that dynamic in our lives, even though the things that happened, I wouldn't have learned what I needed to learn. Had that conversation with her. I think it was like around the same day, like my shrooms came in. I had a shroom order come in, popped some shrooms, sat back, and I recorded it was a Sunday because on Monday I do the podcast episodes. I had some shrooms and I had some DMT. the level that I was vibrating at, the way that I was shaking, the way that I felt, this was like this is one of the first times I felt that in that space. I was like, I know what the fuck this is. I know what this is. This is intimate. I'm crying while I'm recording this episode of the podcast. It's in the earlier seasons. I'm crying. I'm laughing. I'm enjoying. I'm like, I never embraced that feeling with myself. I was like a Summer's Eve commercial. The way they do Summer's Eve and fucking, y'all remember them old General Herpes commercials? That's how I felt. I looked like that. That's how I felt in that space. I remember going outside and looking at the damn trees and dark as hell outside, but I see rainbows and like orbs of light all around me and shit. Like I was open. Never been that open before. But the events that happened after that were some of the most important events that needed to happen. Because as I went through those events, it was a bunch of repeats. This was during the retrograde. It was a bunch of repeat shit, but the way that I faced it, it was like it wasn't based on conflict. I learned the formula. This shit ain't based on no fucking conflict. This shit ain't based on no goddamn protest. I can care less about a motherfucker in a vaccine protest. I understand what Bobby Heenan was saying, like, nigga, they gonna kill millions of you, but you gonna get stuck on that? You got to keep doing your work. That's gonna leave your ass distracted. You gonna have to be, if it's in your space to be the heartless motherfucker, you gonna have to be the heart. You gonna have to be perceived. You're gonna have to accept the perception of a motherfucker calling you heartless. Because they're only coming from their own perspective. Their perspective's locked in the neutral state of survival. Anything that challenges that aspect, that do not admit that only 10% of your brain is online. That is the false mind that is down inside of this space. So if I take 10% of my mind is only online, think about 10% of your mind is only online. And you think about every traumatic experience and all the shit that you've been through is on that memory card. It's only 10%. 10 versus this. Use the example of 100% versus 10%. 10% about that much. So if I take this is the false mind. This is the storage aspect of all of my perceptions. Everything I've ever been through is on this drive about this much space. It is impossible for me to put anything into this drive without having to kick some shit out first. That is the example. This is the best way I can explain to how you live your life coinciding next to your trauma. You only live in 5% of your best life. You deal with a little bit of the trauma or you move some shit around, you still only dealing with 5% of your best life. Imagine if you open up imagine if you assess what's in this little space right here and you open up the other. So now imagine this is what we did. This is what happened when we came to this awakening stage. You opened up the other aspects of your mind and your psyche got expanded, but it was still based on the original 10% memory disk. You just copied and pasted and copied and pasted. That's why you got stuck in the slavery. That's why you got stuck in civil rights. That's why you got stuck in protests. That's why you get stuck in every damn agenda that there is, because it's only copied and pasted from this first 10%. It cannot be inputted into you unless it's already present. So if I'm in this space right here, in my middle point at 10%, and then they tell me my history back here, and they fill it with the slavery and the slave to my emotions and the Freedmen's Bank, or building a base based in my fear, trying to grow up in Black Wall Streets and all of this shit on this side. And then they put all on this side. They put the white man's in charge and all of these aspects. And I'm sitting in between in this 10%. What do you think I'm going to see the world through? What do you think you're going to see the world through? Your traumas and your fear. What do you think this world's going to exist in? Your traumas and your fear. What do you think's going to keep coming to you? Things based on your traumas and your fears. What do you keep proclaiming based on identity? Stuck in this space based on identity. You want to, I don't want nobody to go through what I've been through. That's understandable. But until you become the example and understand it in that full sense, and you come to a point to where you actually can start building something into it, you're not doing anything. That was one of the most heart-wrenching things that I had to understand with myself was once I started, and this is that start-stop mentality that we get stuck in. Once I started moving forward, one of my main issues was I would hold myself back or put myself in a position to be looking back like, cool, I'm waiting for them to come. And I did that countless times. I would get frustrated. And then this one I told you about the human design. My human design, my not self is frustrated. So if I'm frustrated, I'm not inside of myself. I'm either in a past aspect or it's a projected aspect. That assessment of myself, that self-reflection of yourself, that is going to help you understand that. Because once you really start doing, you've done you've done some layering, you've done some remove some layers. Because when you go into certain spaces, now you irritated. You irritated. The more you go over there, the more irritated your ass becomes. Your job don't mean shit no more. Your job is not giving you what you thought that you wanted to get. Your job is meant to teach you some shit and you can move on. What's stopping you from moving on? That attachment. You ain't never been there before. That was your standard. It kept you stagnant. It kept you comfortable. That's why every time something comes up and it gets a little uncomfortable, it's the transit. That's your transitional period. What are you doing with it? It doesn't mean, and when I say that, I'm not telling you you'll quit your job the moment something bad happens. I'm telling you it's uplifting and telling you something based in transition. When we learn that conflict is a natural aspect, we can now learn that conflict is based in it's the opening point to transition. So when something happens inside of a space that's based on a conflict, that means it's going to be a nice time for me to sit there and go into some self-assessment. Let me assess myself real quick. So many times we get into conflicts and we automatically want to blame it on everything else. I'm going to put it on them. It was their fault. You mad because somebody judged you, but you judge everybody in your space. Except what you put out. If you live in judgment in that false narrative of your false mind, then of course what's going to be inside of your space? Congratulations, you built your own prison. Congratulations, you built your own fucking matrix. You talking about, man, I want to get rid of family. I want to deal with generational curses and generational wealth, and I want to deal with the generational wealth and the generational curses. All right, that's emotional literacy, sir, or ma'am, or sis, or bruh, or hotep ass nigga, whatever the fuck you want to be, pop, whatever you want, whatever you are. Time to have that conversation. Emotional literacy, your emotions. That's the magic. That's the conduit of your magic or the magnetism. If I don't have my emotions in order, if you've seen The Witcher on Netflix, how do you think I'm going to send you somewhere if you're not going to be able to maintain your emotions? You must understand give and take. If I can't manage my emotions, I definitely can't manage the aspects of my magic and what I'm attracting. So I damn sure cannot be in control of my intentions. I got good intentions, but my good intentions are rooted in my trauma. So everything that pops up is manifested through my trauma, but I got good intentions. That's why that relationship seemed like trash. That's why that friendship is falling apart. Everything that's came up over your Mercury retrograde, I've been dancing through Mercury retrograde. I danced through the direct aspect because now I'm in the space now to be direct. During retrograde, a lot of energy coming up. What you gonna do with it? Assessment, 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 assessment. Hup, there's something I got to deal with. Let me deal with it. That way, by the time it becomes direct, I can be in a space like where you at now. You trying to look for that perfect? Perfect only simply means balance. Perfect simply means to transition. When something has been perfected, you go through a transition. Perfection is not based on good and bad. Perfection is based on the end of that cycle, the end of that damn cycle. So that relationship that you thought was so fucking bad, it was perfected based on your traumas. It existed based on your traumas. It came to a breaking point because you weren't dealing with the traumas. Therefore, it perfected and came back into balance with itself. You transitioned, but you still stuck on the memories. The memories are still there. Those are your lessons. When are you going to sit back and learn the lessons? Because if you don't learn it, the next void, the next black hole you get to go through, the next galaxy you about to go through, the next set of veils you about to go through is only going to show them same damn lessons. So you wandering around still. I want somebody to love me because of what? Because you got a job? Because you got a place? Because you got a degree? Because you got this? The external shit? Okay. But how did you acquire these things, and what was the energy that you used to acquire those things? You acquired your job through fear of never wanting to struggle ever again. You acquired your car through fear of never wanting to have to depend on anybody again. You got the degrees so you can never have to depend on anybody again. So now somebody comes into your space, those standards aren't met because now you got to go deeper inside to get to that point. And you said, oh my God, but I'm a good person. You good based on the identity. What about the standard within inside of yourself? What about that internal standard? What is your internal standard based on peace? Are you at peace with yourself? Then therefore you can't bring peace to anybody else. Are you really happy in love, that depth within inside of yourself? Then how do you expect to radiate at that level? How do you expect to even see what it is if you've only done it from an external aspect? If you're only doing it based on the avoidance, if you're only doing it based on the threat of you still hear your father's voice in the back of your head, you still hear the voice of your mother in the back of your head. How can you see something in this space if you're not in dealing with this space? You're only going to see it in reflection. It's only that's what arouses you up. That's what triggers you. That's what gets you upset. It's because it's coming through that same stream of thought. So something, you still listening to a conversation back here. You still dealing with a conversation way back here in the depths of your mind that you have not really dealt with. So now anything that comes into your space, the masculine frequency, the feminine principle comes into your space and brings that up into your face. Triggered. Two things that I learned. Two most powerful things that I learned, or two most powerful things that I learned from my mentors. That's when I was scaling up, from my mentors. My mentors taught me that nobody that is going to push you forward, is going to tell you things that are going to keep you comfortable. I remember sitting in the office of a restaurant with my managing partner and like the managers. No, my managing partner. I was shaking. I was so upset at that time. And I'm sitting here that's pouring out of my eyes. And I'm sitting here talking about I don't want to fail and all of this shit that's coming up at this point in time in this space. And I remember like later on that day, like they said, go clean your face up. I remember riding with my boss, Nick Leach, coolest Italian in the fucking planet. And I rolled with him, and he was like, he told me about this story about his dad. Got an emotional moment. We tearing-eyed and shit. And that lesson taught me in that space. That was like one of those memories I had to go read and access. I was like, that's what vulnerability is. Vulnerability is going to make me the strongest motherfucker in the planet. Vulnerability is going to make me the person that when you're in that true sense of vulnerability. Remember, I've talked about this too. We went into that 2 lectures ago. We have to get past the point. Most of the times when we're inside of spaces in this wanderlust or trying to maintain in this perception, we'll tell the story from the point of the hurt. We'll tell the story from the point of the emotional aspects to give life to our behavior. So it's like the disclaimer that we give ourselves, like my mother did this and my dad did this and this person did this, so this is why I'm like this. So it's like an emotional disclaimer. So now everything that we look through that space, we look for these emotional taglines in conversations, and we look for these behavioral points to maintain the behavior. And vulnerability, remember I was telling y'all about owning your story, is being able to look at your entire story. I don't give a damn what my mother says, my pop says, my uncle says, family member says. I'm owning this part of this story because I can go back and say, yo, thank you, Uncle Tom, for your pedophilish ass ways. Because you taught me the value in understanding myself and not putting myself out there based on tricking. Thank you, Pops, for your telling me to write down 976 times the damn 10 commandments. Because without you teaching me that repetition, I would not be able to do such and such and such and such. That's ownership of your story. That's being able to go back, because you, as long as there's always that point, remember your unseen creates your space. You'll start once you start saying like the unseen creates my space, the unseen creates my space, you'll understand how every relationship and everything came into existence inside of your space. You'll start having a deeper understanding of like, oh shit, that's why. The reason that this lasted so long, or that I hold on to this for so long and I do what I do inside of this space, is because it pertains to this aspect of this traumatic event that I've not dealt with. Because every time that it get poked at, you'll see it, and then this is how your higher self speaks to you, your ancestors, your spirit guides. This is how they speak to you when you go into a space that's based on that frequency of thought. It's going to come up into that space. This is why I made that post earlier on my Facebook. Like, listen to look at the conversations that you have. Most of the conversations that you have in are fucking masturbation of your fucking ego, or masturbation of that identity that you're trying to hold on to, or that behavior. It makes you feel good. It may make you feel like shit. But either way, you got to take that to a point inside with you and be like, that made me feel good. What other good memories do I have? I guarantee you're going to go through the traces of the bad memories to lead to that point. It made you feel some type of way? Good. It's time to deal with it. It's only going to keep coming up. It's only going to keep more and more rapidly coming up. And this is only based to if you are meant to do, if you're on that level. You can make the decision to go back to your old life. You can make that decision. No judgment. Go back. But if you decide to move forward, either way, I'm going to tip my hat off to you because you came to a certain point. This is what you have to understand. You're not looking for anybody to validate, be like, oh, you did this. Yay. Because that's based on feeling good. You'll see when you're actually you're tapping into it because the connections change. This is when you come into connections. That's when you get to have a conversation and the conversations become different. That means you have a conversation with this person and they tell you some shit. And for the first time ever, you didn't try to go look inside of your mind to connect to them or attach to them. It's connected. You're like, damn, I feel like we've been having these conversations forever. Changes your whole perception. But that same individual is going to piss you the fuck off. But the way that they make you upset is going to be based on an internal aspect. It's going to force you to internalize. See, when you're down here in this fear-based narrative with the people that are stuck in their ways and don't want to do that, don't want to take that, don't want to make that move, they're always going to take you further away from yourself. You got to understand those connections always bring you to yourself. Attachments take you further away from yourself. They keep you in the identity. They keep you in the perception. They keep you moving the same way because they're moving through fear. But when you start doing this when you're doing the internal work, you start being able to see where others are projecting. You'll be able to start seeing, because the first thing you're going to see, in order to see motherfuckers are projecting, in order to be able to see and understand where people are projecting, you got to understand your own damn deflections. Chop it down. It's time to stop wandering. It's time to stop wandering and hoping that something is going to happen. And it's time to be like, you know what? It's time for me to sit down with myself. It's time for me to really sit down and see why I'm always mad, see why I always need to stay in conflict. It's time to assess your patterns. It's time to learn those patterns. I remember learning so many of my patterns, and this is the crazy part. So many of your patterns are so intricate. They're so interwoven. They all intertwine into something that's why for a lot of people, when you start doing a lot of healing work and you start removing those top layers, a lot of other stuff comes to the surface because you're seeing the interconnections of how they weave together to give your avatar its body. Follow them. Follow it down into that space and follow it. I guarantee you're going to be like, nigga, this is different. I like the way this shit feel. You'll uncover your codependency. You'll uncover your insecurities. It's time to uncover that shit. You know you're insecure in certain spaces in your life and you keep creating things to mask your insecurity. Stop doing that shit. Learn the reason. It's not saying don't, because it's easy to say, motherfuckers be like, the love and light answer would be like, stop doing it, go stand outside and go stand in nature and ground yourself. In the dark side, they'll be like, nigga, you got to go say hail Satan like 17 times. From the balance perspective, go into the darkness, and call it forth to the light. Call that shit to the light. Call it to the light. Deal with it. Face it. Allow the emotions to come up. Stop avoiding it. Stop running away from shit. You've been running half your damn life. Some of us, your first parts of your life was running away. Your life was based on running away. Your life was based on the running away, multiple houses, living in all these different places, having to get to know people. So now your current life is in reflection of that. Some of your lives was in the aspects of being sheltered. You were bought everything that you needed. You were given everything that you wanted. You were never taught boundaries. You were never given that space. Some of y'all had half and half. I was one of them half and half niggas. First half of my life, 2-parent household. Niggas didn't have an ounce of love in between them. When I met my pops, when I met my father, it was in that underworld life, in them streets, out there in that life, mafia-like shit. I learned love. I learned honor. I learned respect. I learned transparency. I learned a lot of shit in that darkness. Just so I could go back and apply it to the life that was in the light. I ain't seen half the shit. Someone asked me about something about being racism. I don't know. I really don't know what the fuck it is. I haven't seen it. I haven't, because I have an understanding, so I don't attract it. I'm aware that it's there, but I understand what it's a tool of. I understand that it's there, but I understand what it's a tool from. I know where it stems from. So when I face it, it's different. It's like, oh shit, I'm not looking at it the way everybody else looked at it. I'm looking at it differently. My perception's different. You're going to have to accept that your perception is going to be a lot different than a lot of motherfuckers. When you're doing your work. It's time to stop wandering, lusting into your urges, and actually start planning yourself down into your space, what you need to be doing. If they're not there, they're not going to be there. One thing that I had to learn, if they're not there, they're not going to be there. I can't wait. I will not put myself in a position of waiting. If they come to me, I'm going to it's going to be the same exact conversation. Outside of bias, is going to be direct, to the point, move forward. Direct, to the point, move forward. You ready? All right. Nah, man, I ain't ready yet. All right, cool. That doesn't mean that it ends this connection to us, because I understand that they're going through their shit. I'm doing through my shit. But it's naturally going to be this separation. And I'm not in that state of that attachment. I understand they're going through what they're going through. They may keep going through what they're going through. If I'm in a position to do some shit, then I'll do something. If I'm truly not, I'm not going to overextend myself, or I'm going to assess the space and be like, you know what? Nah, I can't do it. Accepting they're going to get mad at you or whoever, whatever. They're going to get mad regardless. They're going to have the same breakdown with or without you stepping in. They're going to have the same rant with or without you stepping in. They're going to do the same. They're going to go down the same exact path with or without you stepping in. When you step in based on an emotional wound, it just causes a deflection and it distorts what they're going to do. Because now that they know that they can do that, they're just going to do something. They're just going to take it up a notch. They're just going to take it up a notch until you or them say, like, just go ahead and fucking do it. What's the worst thing that's going to happen? This is coming from the position of, like, if you can't do anything and you know that you cannot do anything outside of not taking it to, stop trying to take on that shit. That's one thing that you have to understand. Like, stop trying to take on everybody else's weight, everybody else's struggle, everybody else's problems. because you're going to start noticing that the only reason that they have the problems is it's rooted in the reason that you're really getting bothered when you get deep down into yourself and you keep getting bothered by that is because it's rooted in the same equivalent to where you're at. Because when you started dealing with, when I noticed, when I started dealing with a lot of my internal shit, I could see I could better be more compassionate to the situation. I could see it differently. I wasn't seeing it through the wound. I wasn't seeing it as I stopped doing it pro bono. Basically, I stopped doing it pro bono or investing my emotional energy into that space for them only to go back to it. I became, in some of my homies' lives, I was the dad they never had. In some of my homegirls' lives, I was the dad they never had. Hell, in I was the mother that they never had. You got to take yourself out of that position. You have to provide, because that's where you go into these relationships and like they expect you to act the way that their mother acted so they can keep acting the way that they act. They want you to keep acting like the way their father did or the person that hurt them did so they can keep reacting the way that they reacted. They're going to do that regardless. But if you go into there based in conflict, then you're going to get sucked into that space. Time to disengage. I pulled 5 cards. I'm going to do this collective. But this is our question and answer period. It's your first time stopping through. First time coming through. It's the question and answer period. I got a collective reading spread sitting out here. I've been playing with all the energy inside of the space. Question and answer. Live readings. The readings are done by donation. So whatever's in your spirit, you can drop in. Much gratitude to that. Much gratitude if you drop in just for the sprinkle in, just for the appreciation to the lesson. If it moved you, y'all know I desire y'all to be the fucking best. I can't desire from anything outside of me more than I desire inside of myself. That's a false perception. When you keep trying to desire things to be greater than you outside of yourself, it's based on a sense of them not willing to apply. That's one thing that I had to learn, especially when it came to old narratives, families, and friends. The reason that I was in that space and the reason they would become a certain way is that doing deep reflection with myself, and they would act a certain way is because they wanted the next level or the next identity or next marker or title, so they did not have to apply the work. It's similar to that nigga at your job or that girl at your job right the fuck now that is upset because they're not getting any more money or they're feeling a sense of entitlement. And you looking at them like, you always calling out. That's why you don't get no money. I pick up all the shifts that you work and make more money. You can't get this without application. You ain't doing none of this shit without application. And getting into that shadow gonna be the deepest of your applications. That unseen, it's a motherfucker. Do this collective reading real quick. First card that I pulled off while I was sitting there doing that nice little shuffle was the 8 of Swords. The Eight of Swords represents bondage, self-inflicted bondage. You tied yourself up in that sense of that position, but you know what you have to face to untie yourself. You know what you have to do to untie yourself. You know exactly what you must do. You know what you need to be doing. It's time to stop avoiding it. That's written in the King of Swords. Acknowledging what you must be doing. That's going to challenge that old perception of yourself, because in a lot of those spaces, you feel like you were the go-to. But now it's time to question why you are the go-to in all these positions with yourself. Now it's time to question, why are you always the go-to? Why are you always the go-to? Is it really based on, are you really saying some things that's moving some motherfuckers and making them do some different shit? Or is it just based on you sitting there and you trauma lube? This is going to be a very deep moment of self-reflection. Looking at yourself, your past, your current, all your reflections. Which path are you going to take moving forward? Which space are you about to learn through? And that led into that last aspect, the nurturing aspect of the Queen of Swords. So I have swords and I got wands. So that means assessment, cutting free, and reflection. It's time to challenge that identity that you've been holding on to all these years. What's the root of that identity? What's the pattern behind that identity? What's the habits behind that identity? It's time to, you've been lost, but you haven't accepted. There's a difference between being lost and accepting the fall into the void. So many people, when we're going through our work, you will get lost, but you're not accepting the fall into the void. That fall into the void that will take away all that is going to impede all of that lostness and put it to work for you. You're not lost. You're just looking at the void and you're afraid to jump in that hole. You're afraid to jump through that death. You're afraid to go through that transition because the deep part inside of you knows everything's going to change. Everything's about to be challenged. And now you're going to have to put in that work. You know what you need to be doing. I know what I needed to be doing, and I knew that I avoided it. And the longer that I avoided it, the more and more things in my physical world disappeared. Anyway, the shit that I coveted, the shit that I tried to hold on to, shit fell away any damn way. You keep wandering if you want to. I'm not. You can keep moving through the same space, keep doing the same thing. Go ahead. By all means. But if you're ready to assess yourself, you're ready to learn, you're ready to do that deep work, there's always openings, opportunities. There's always the opportunity. You're always in the right position. What are you doing with it? You're always in the right position. What are you doing in that position? You can go back and forth to try to fight it. All you're doing is fighting yourself. I've said that before. All you're doing is fighting yourself. This entire time, all of those traumatic, all that trauma, everything that you're unseen, everything that keeps coming up into your space, you're only fighting yourself. You've only been fighting yourself this entire time. When I open myself up to that, nigga, I'm only fighting myself. Nigga, shit, I could beat me. I ain't know how strong I really was. I didn't know how strong I really was. That feels great. But I desire you to be the fucking best. Everything from readings, consultations, setting up a shadow work consultation to see if you want to go deeper into the shadow therapy. Links are all in the description of this. Hit me in the inbox. Hit me at the number. Because there's no more excuses. If you learned over the last, year and 6 months, there's no more excuses. This shit ain't based on renting anymore. This shit ain't based on rent a life and hide behind. This shit is based on ownership. It's been based on the same exact thing the whole entire time. It's been based on ownership. It's been based on that LLC mentality. It's been based on owning your story. It's been based in that the entire time. You're the only thing that has power down here. You're the only thing that has the power. You're the only power source down here. You around a bunch of motherfuckers that seem never to be able to move without you. Guess what? You might be the only motherfucker in that space for the soul. They soul may have left and made a transfer. I've seen that shit happen. I've watched motherfuckers' soul leave their body and they still walking around right the fuck now. I've watched that shit happen so many fucking times. I done watched niggas' souls like be absorbed by nearby trees and shit. They over there now. You got a choice. It's either to heal or repeat. Oh, shit. Be the fucking best. Some of y'all, it's time to get in contact with that inner aspect of yourself. What you gonna do? I love you. There are no questions. I'm gonna bid y'all adieu. I've been shaking for the last 26 minutes. But I love you. You love us. Share, subscribe. Readings, consultations, all that good stuff. Y'all hit me up in the inbox at Rockola Nijis or Dorsamdi Ra, new name. Or hit me in Papa _Lucy, or hit the number 910-240-3999. Be the fucking best.